Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your in-depth look at news from around the world. I'm Sally Jensen. Growth has become an integral part of our lives. GDP growth is a political goal, industries expand, and we all strive to have more. At the same time, we're seeing ever-growing climate disasters and inequality both within and across national borders. The global economic system we've built has led many to ask whether we can continue to rely on capitalism to solve our problems. And some see degrowth as the answer. Here to talk to us about degrowth today is Kohei Saito. Kohei is the author of two books, Capitalism in the Anthropocene and Marx in the Anthropocene. Kohei, welcome to the show.
Great. Hi.
Can you tell us about your books and what led you to write them?
Okay, the recent pandemic revealed two main contradictions of capitalism. One is enlarging economic inequality, and the other is serious environmental crisis. And I argue that both of them are basically caused by capitalism's infinite desire for accumulation and expansion. So the only solution to tackle the climate crisis, especially, is degrowth.
So let's first zoom out on this concept. Can you tell us what degrowth is?
So my point about degrowth is quite simple. Only 2 points. One, abandon GDP as the single measure of social progress because GDP can grow by destroying the planet, by conducting war, so killing people, and by enlarging economic inequality. GDP doesn't measure these things. So we need a different kind of measure. That's one point. And the second point is we should also reduce unnecessary things. We need electric vehicles, we need renewable energy, so we need to invest in them. But that doesn't mean we also need to invest in private jets. We don't need to invest in big cars and sports cars. I'm not arguing for going back to nature, abandoning all the technologies and so on. We need electric vehicles, we need renewable energies, so we need investment in certain sectors of economy. That's for sure. Now, we are doing this interview with the more recent technologies and so on. So I admit that economic growth in the past brought about many good things. But that doesn't mean continuing economic growth in the future for infinite amount of time doesn't mean that we will be happier and we can establish a sustainable society.
Would you be able to talk a little bit about yourself and how you arrived at these ideas of degrowth? What was it about your life that got you to this way of thinking?
Actually, I was not very sympathetic to the idea of degrowth because I also thought that degrowth is bringing poverty to many people and degrowth is never attractive to the working class. But I actually realized after studying about Green New Deal and other kinds of proposals about green growth and green development, the assumption is basically once we invest in new green technologies like Tesla or other renewable energies and so on, they argue as if we could basically keep the current way of life because all those new wonderful technologies will solve everything. But that's very problematic. And I looked at what Greta Thunberg said and the Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, and all the kinds of new environmental movements of the younger generation. I realized that they are also basically criticizing capitalism and they are also demanding climate justice and they are not demanding more technological development and more cars and more clean airplanes and so on. They are really demanding very different kinds of life justice for everyone on the planet, not justice only for the rich people and the rich countries. So then I came to realize technology alone is not sufficient. We need to really fundamentally challenge capitalism and not only capitalism, but also growth.
The concept of degrowth is now gaining traction in a lot of countries. A lot of people are starting to talk about it. Why do you think this is?
We have been witnessing, on the one hand, that even after various economic reforms and we work harder and we try harder, we compete harder, our life is actually getting worse and worse, and the economic inequality is enlarging. This massive accumulation of the wealth in the hands of the few is actually a very scandalous thing. And the other aspect is, despite various international discussions and various green transformation by large corporations, the situation of the climate crisis is not getting better at all. So people start to wonder whether capitalism can solve this problem of climate crisis at all.
And green growth is quite a major topic at this current COP28 UN climate summit, and governments have come together to try to fix the problem of the climate crisis. Do you have any views on COP28?
Yes, the COP28. So now it means that we have held that kind of conferences for 28 times. And the problem is, if you look at the global carbon emission, the number is not decreasing at all. And if you look at the document of the COPs, they never agree that they will phase out from fossil fuels. So what's the point of those big gigantic conferences that are held every year? I think the fundamental problem is that they never question capitalism. They never really question the infinite economic growth, and they can never really talk about taxing the super rich people. And so, in a sense, all the ways for more progressive and just transition is already barred from the beginning. And I think that's why they end up talking about carbon capture and storages and that kind of new dream technologies in the end, because those new technologies help us to believe that we don't have to really change our way of life because technology will save us.
A lot of people around the world may not like this idea of redistribution or sharing out the world's resources, because for a lot of people it may mean that they lose what they have worked hard to achieve. How do you respond to those criticisms?
I understand many people freaked out when they hear the terms like socialism and degrowth. But if you look at today's situation, the very rich people, the super rich, are not only concentrating the wealth of the society, but also with that wealth, they are also squandering the natural wealth of the planet. So the problem of inequality on the one hand, and the problem of accelerating climate crisis on the other hand, are tightly linked. And especially the super rich people are responsible for both of the problems. So why don't we redistribute the wealth, and why don't we put higher progressive income and wealth tax? And why don't we ban private jet and luxurious items so that everyone on this planet can live better and sustainably?
So you're using the word we a lot, but whose job really is it to implement degrowth?
Yes. So one thing about degrowth is, oh, then what about the people in the global south? They need obviously more electricity, more infrastructure, and so on. So, in a sense, the global south needs to grow. And when I say we, mainly I'm talking to people in the global north. So, people in Japan, people in the US, and even Taiwan. People have actually already enough, and so government can obviously help introducing some policies and ban unnecessary advertisement and short distance domestic flights and so on. But we citizens can also set up communities and building up new NGO, NPO, and other social activities. So on the multiple levels and the scales, we can make a transition.
The idea, the concept is rather abstract, it's all quite high level. How realistic do you think it actually is for degrowth to be implemented globally, given the current economic and political setup?
Yes, but we can start with something that can be introduced within capitalism. So we can start by banning private jets. I think many people can agree in a democratic manner that we don't need private jets because we never use it, right? So maybe starting with that, then why don't we ask, okay, maybe we don't also need short distance domestic flight, and maybe we don't need industrial beef production and so on and so on, and we can pile them up to the point where we can also introduce some more radical measures like introducing maximum incomes or reducing work days to 4 work day per week, or even 3 work day per week.
There is the issue, though, that, heavily polluting industries, by some estimates, 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from just a handful of companies. So even if the vast majority of people would like to see less inequality, how can the current setup change? Really, how realistic is it?
Things are actually easier. If few companies are responsible, we should just nationalize these companies, and then we can plan. We cannot simply dismantle all the companies because they are really building the core of current societies. But we can, once we nationalize these industries and companies, we can plan accordingly how to reach zero carbon emission by 2050. And this is the idea of planning, even though not many people want to hear about these terms like socialism, the Marxism, and degrowth. I think it is necessary to listen to those voices. And I'm very happy that this provocation has become very, very popular in Japan. And selling this book, Capital in the Anthropocene, sold more than 500,000 copies in Japan.
So finally, what would a degrowth world look like to you?
The whole point is in the degrowth kind of post-capitalist society, all the basic goods and services are provided for free or by very low, cheap prices so that everyone can have access. And then we work fewer hours. Maybe we work 25 hours per week. And that means that we have to give up certain things. We maybe have to give up convenience stores. We probably have to give up fast fashion and fast food. But at the same time, we have more time for families, friends, and you have more time for learning new things and doing sports. And all those compensation that are not measured by GDP can increase your happiness and build a better community with others. So I think overall, even if you don't have a new iPhone every year, you have much more fulfilling relationship with others and your close friends and family, and you become more healthy and so on. And so these are the better society that humans should actually strive after a certain point of economic development.
I think that's a great way to leave it. Thank you so much, Kohei Saito, for joining us today.
Thank you.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more stories from Taiwan Plus, you can go on our website at taiwanplus.com. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan, around the world, and in front of a World War II era aircraft carrier, please download the TaiwanPlus app. It's bigger than it looks.